So that was just to refresh everybody that went, shh, they're saying the forecast. So you got, that opened yesterday, didn't it? Circle K? We're by the airport?
Not 100% sure. I have been told that it would open January, February, so I can't tell you for certain.
I drove past it. Now I'm off by all my days here.
Yeah.
Monday it said opening soon.
Oh.
Yeah, any time now, but I don't know the exact date.
Well, I find it because last night, where were we here? Let's see. Tony from the staff here just grabbed a couple things at the new airport Circle K. Nicest station around by far.
Well, then I would hope it's open. That you didn't steal anything from him.
Or maybe you had a special invitation. He said, it's perfect for me. It's on my way.
Well, that's good to hear. Now I'm going to have to go over and check it out. You know, 7 Brew just opened.
Yep.
So they were giving out a lot of free samples to businesses, and I think they had a customer day out there, and so they're up and running. You know, so some of these projects that have been in the works are now going live. I don't think Starbucks is too far behind everybody here on this side of town, so some new stuff coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's always great to see building going on.
Speaking of new stuff, YMCA.
Yeah.
We were talking about the work session. So that was a huge part of the conversation because this project is getting pretty well refined. And I think we're starting to get a really good handle on what the numbers are going to look like. And so, you know, that was the big discussion. So Greater Bemidji, along with Luke's and also the consultants that are doing, you know, a lot of the development type work all came in and did a work session with us and talked to us about, you know, here's where the project is. And it sounds like it's going to come to the city council for a vote here February. So at that point, the city council will have to decide, yep, we're going to do this and let's move forward, or nope, this isn't going to work. And, you know, that's going to be the end of that location. So we'll see.
I don't want to say there's anything like a no-brainer in politics, but isn't this one a no-brainer?
Yeah, I always hesitant to call anything a no-brainer. And you know, there's always opposite sides to ideas, but I think the work that's been done on this over the last 3 years has brought this project to a place where it makes a lot of sense. You know, at least that's my opinion. We're talking about a project that when it's all said and done through construction phase 1, we're talking about $38 million worth of investment. That's a lot.
Yeah.
You know, that's a lot. And of that, the city's portion is currently set to be about $992,000. And
pittance.
Very, very small amount of money relative to everything that's being invested. And then also we have some infrastructure, which is around $600,000. But infrastructure is a little bit different because we know we have the neighborhood over there behind the bridge that needs some, you know, water and sewer upgrades. Some of the pipe that's in the ground over there is from the 1900s. I mean, it's undersized. And so we already have in our plans doing a certain amount of work to get that up to spec over time. So putting in this line for the YMCA project allows us to build off of that to handle some of these other things. So yes, it's an investment in the project, but it has benefits that go beyond the project. So
you're going to spend some money on it anyway.
Right. We could argue maybe without the project, that'd be 300 instead of 600, let's say.
Sure.
But it's not, you know, going to be the full amount. And we have some options as a city right away. Do we want to add to that infrastructure and add water and sewer to the east side of that so we can develop that? You know, do we want to go under the railroad tracks? There's a number of different choices we have. And the thing about those dollars is they come from utility fees. So they're not coming off the tax levy. It's just like if we're doing an improvement to the wastewater treatment plant or anything else. So
good to know.
You know, that's a little bit different. But right now we received from the state pretty close to $1.5 million, I want to say. The grant that we received on the cleanup was $902,000. And then we also received the redevelopment grant, which was pretty close to 5 something. So, you know, those are pretty important sources of revenue that are coming in here. And the YMCA, I think they've done a really responsible job of trying to assess what our community's needs are. What do we really need here? And they've gone back and forth on their building and what would be in it and those kinds of things. Well, one of the things they came back with is going ahead and adding childcare. 100 slots of childcare will be at the YMCA. for our community that we know we're short childcare, what's 100 slots? That matters. That's important. They're proposing to offer 50,000 free meals for kids and seniors on an annual basis as part of their programming. How big is that?
Huge.
That's a really important deal. And they're also going to be offering a discounted membership for people who live in the city, which I thought was pretty unique because I think the YMCA is recognizing that people within the city limits are paying more here
Sure.
to make this thing happen. And so do I know what that discount is or how it's going to work or anything like that? I don't, but it's being proposed. And I thought that was a nice gesture, given that a lot of times you don't get that concession from different things. So I thought that was really, really a good deal. And that's before you get into just the programming, having the Y for our families and our citizens to be able to go to year round, the wellness component, all the programming they do, cleanup of a contaminated site that's been sitting there for how long? The revitalization it's going to bring to downtown to kind of shore up that part. I mean, you go down all of those benefits and you say, well, we're going to invest $992,000 and, potentially, $600,000 in utilities, and we get all of that. And it's a one-time investment. That's the other thing. Sometimes I've heard people, well, we don't want another Sanford Center type situation where, it's hitting the levee and all these things. Well, we're not going to own the YMCA.
Right.
So any operating issues that come up are not the cities, they're the YMCA's. The YMCA is going to own the building. So when it needs repairs and maintenance, who does that fall on? The YMCA, not the city. So we know when we make this investment, that's it. Now, where are these $992,000 coming from, Mark? Well, you remember we talked about the Circle K? We sold it for 1.3.
There you go.
We just spent 400,000 on the bank. That leaves us with 900,000. We need 992. See where I'm headed with this? The majority of the money is going to come from that Circle K property sale, and we've got a little bit of overflow that we're going to use, it sounds like, out of liquor store funds. So the whole goal is to keep these investment dollars off the levy. So when you say it's a no-brainer, we get $38 million worth of investment. We get all the benefits that I just described. We get a YMCA, and we're going to use dollars that we got from selling property to make all this happen. That seems like a pretty good deal to me.
Net zero. Do they have a consideration on taxes? The YMCA, do they?
So the YMCA does not pay property taxes, but there's a few interesting things in this because when we say 992, it's not actually that number because we have to charge building fees. So the building fees are anticipated to be $200,000. So those $200,000 are coming back to the city for building fees. We have WAC and SAC fee, which is the connection fee for hooking up water and sewer. That's going to be, say, $50,000. So that's coming back to the city. And then also the sales tax that's collected in the city for all the construction material that's used to build it has a value too, and that's being projected around $150,000. So add all of that up, and before the thing's even operational, that's what's coming back to the city. Now, what's being proposed isn't just the YMCA, it's also the preparation of another building site where you could have one or two businesses that would be tax paying. So even though the YMCA itself wouldn't pay tax, this other building site potentially could. And if I remember my numbers correctly, it sounded like that would be estimated at about $36,000 a year in total tax capacity. And then this is all on the west side. We're not talking about on the east side. So if that were to be developed down the road, that would all potentially be taxable property too, depending on what's there.
And none of this further development happens if the first part doesn't happen.
Right.
And that's really key. Once you have your anchor, which would be the YMCA, it's much more attractive for people to build around it. If you don't have that, you have a contaminated site with dilapidated buildings on it, which is what we currently have. So I'm excited. I think,
good job.
I think it's been, this project came to me like within the first 6 months of being in office. So 3.5 years, we've been kind of working away at this. And you might recall when it first came to us, Sanford Health was going to own it. And so it's taken a lot of different turns. And so a lot of credit to Greater Bemidji, to our city staff, to the people who are actually giving philanthropy here to make this happen. Sanford Health is contributing $10 million. the YMCA for stepping up and wanting to be a part of this. Just a lot of people have been involved to get it to this point.
As a mayor, what does it mean to you where the YMCA of the Fargo-Moorhead area, I forget what they're,
Yeah, they just
YMCA of the
the
Northern
yep.
Star or something.
They just renamed. Yeah.
What does it mean to you that they want to come here and they see the potential of what this city is and what it can be?
I think it's a credit to everybody in our community that's made an investment here, whether that's raising a family or building a business, that we're to that place where, you know, a group like that can look at us and say, we see the potential, we see the future, and we want to make investment. The YMCA itself is bringing $10 million to this project. So there's a lot of people who say really nice flowery things about a city or about a person, but you can really tell where their heart is when they open
10
their
million
wallet.
bucks. Yeah.
And so when you open your wallet and say, not only do I want to run this operationally and want to come be a part of this, but I'm willing to bring $10 million to it, that says something. And I think that's really, really a good thing.
And YMCA's are more than a place just to swim or play basketball.
Yeah, it's
They
all
offer
the,
a lot of services.
it's all the programming. I mean, that's the thing. You know, people get lost in the building, and there's plenty of private gyms in Bemidji. Maybe not to this scale, but they're there. But what makes the Y unique is the programming, what they offer the community. And certainly, how many gyms do you know that are doing 100 slots of childcare?
Or just handing out free meals.
Or doing
Right.
free meals? And so much of the Y is based around, you know, what can you afford to pay? Which for a community that is struggling with a low median income, that's huge.
But there isn't a place to go swim. I know we have a bunch of lakes. And
Well, I know, like, if you're a member, let's say, of the Gillette Fitness Center, they have a pool. You could go do that. There's hotels that do little things. But to your point, like a real place where the community can go to do aquatics, no. But if we get this done, there will be.
there you go. And it's like revenue neutral. So that's with potential. Same thing that Menards did when they built and
Yeah.
created
But I hope people realize that this is kind of unique for a project. A lot of these Y projects are driven very much by the city, where the municipality is putting up a lot more than we are. And I think the reason this project is unique because there's a recognition of the fact that we just don't have the same financial bandwidth as other communities do. I mean, to your point about Fargo-Moorhead, you know, what does their economy look like versus ours? So what
It's substantially different. Let's put it that way.
So what can Fargo-Moorhead offer a YMCA if they're going to come to town? Quite a bit different than what we can. So that's why I give credit to a lot of people who've been involved here, because it's a real partnership effort.
All right. Not to drop the gloves.
But I'm going to drop the gloves. See,
here it comes.
I might.
with all due respect, that's the only part that's missing.
Other part of this was roundabouts and making them look nice. I
Yeah.
understand you don't just. I mean, this is an entry point to the city. You want to make it as warm and appealing as you can. I would venture a guess I'm not the only one who saw some of those figures and there was a little bit of sticker shock.
Yeah, so, you know, they're talking about over $1 million of landscaping, 1.1 million in landscaping. So it's a good news, bad news kind of situation, again, from my point of view. The good news is this is all being paid with grant money from the RAISE grant. So again, it's not falling on the levy. So that one-time investment,
Awesome.
you're going to spend 1.1 million, is coming from a grant. It's not coming from the levy. That's the good news. The not so good news is
You got to maintain it.
you got to maintain it. And so that's, you know, are you thinking long term of what the cost is going to be to maintain all this landscaping 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? And so, you know, we also got some numbers on that depending on, you know, what year we were in. And, you know, some of this is about 20 grand a year to maintain and so forth. So, you know, that's the other piece of it. Also, you're changing the look of the corridor pretty dramatically. And I think, you know, for those who are listening, if you have an interest, I recommend you go to the city website, you take a look at the packet, because there's a lot of schematics. I brought in here, which of course nobody can see on radio, some really nice photos of what it's going to look like.
Well, everybody's got a phone. They can jump on, look at it.
Yeah. So, you know, there's a lot going on. And one of the things that I keyed on was they're proposing approximately 200 trees for this boulevard. Well, you know how many trees are on this boulevard right now?
Zero.
0. So you go from 0 to 200 trees.
Yeah, but don't you have to have X amount of trees?
You're correct. The question is how many, and so it's kind of a balancing act because, again, to Schulte's point, you want your entryway to the city to look good, 100%. At the same time, you have businesses on that corridor that have invested in signage and visibility so
need
that
to be
when
seen.
people drive by, they can see them. Especially, I think of somebody like Donlinger's with a car lot. So how do you put 200 trees into that boulevard in a way that doesn't overly obscure the businesses that are behind them? So when it was my turn to talk about this, that was one of my main concerns, was bringing that up. First was the cost of maintaining it long term, but the second was how do we make sure those businesses remain visible to consumers who may not have been to our town before? You know, it's not like those of us who live here are confused as to where Target is, but if you've never been to this community and you're driving through it for the first time and you can't see signage or you can't see the building, perhaps that's going to be a problem. So our city engineer has been given the authority to work with businesses to try to place these trees in a way that do not negatively impact that. So I thought that was a good step. But
Well,
yeah,
if some are put in the wrong spot, they're just going to die.
well, that's part of that maintenance. Like, we're not irrigating these, so we have to go out and hand water these, especially during the first couple of years as they're growing, you know, in essence from saplings. So it's
But it does look like it's easy to mow.
some of it is. There's some native grasses here, but there's also some turf, if you will. And, you know, there's a good blend of trees. There's some evergreens, and, you know, so it's not all high maintenance type of plantings, but, you know, it's not going to be zero.
I'm sure they're also considering snow and runoff and where that can go.
Plowing it, obviously. And there is a lot of concrete here when you start putting in roundabouts, and what's going to be in the center of those roundabouts, what color are they going to be, you know, all of that kind of stuff is what was being discussed, and not just for the corridor, because that's MnDOT and we're giving input onto what's going to be there, but also the side streets like Middle School Drive.
Yeah.
What are they going to look like? And so that was the other half of that work session, and it took a little bit to sort through all of that. So I think people are going to start seeing the construction phase of that this summer, and it's going to carry into next summer because the first job is to get the city side streets completed this year. Next year, it'll be MnDOT coming in to do Paul Bunyan Drive and all the trails and everything else that's a part of this. So it's going to be, I think, a real challenging time for everybody over there for the next couple of years. And the goal, of course, is to make that investment so that the thoroughfare is better long term. But short-term pain for long-term gain is the goal.
I think anyone who would have either gone to those city council meetings leading up to where we are now, or watched them online, or watched them after the fact, or heard a news report here on the radio, or read the newspaper, may feel that there might be a little angst between MnDOT and the city. That isn't per se true, correct?
Well, I don't know.
Frustrations?
You're going to be working partners on this, and going forward, there's angst isn't the right word, correct?
No, I don't think angst is the right word. I think I'll speak for myself. Let me just start there. So I'm a business person, and when I negotiate with any other party in business, I want a clear contract with clear stipulations, and I try to eliminate as much of the gray as possible. So 10 years later, when we're having a disagreement about whatever it is, we go to the contract, there it is. That's what my goal is when I'm in business. When we were in these negotiations with MnDOT, that's the same approach I wanted to take. We're going to agree to do this project in a certain way. Let's put it all down on paper. Let's make sure everybody's clear on what we're doing here and how we're going to do it, both for this portion of the corridor and the rest of the corridor that goes all the way down to, say, Caribou and CVS, so that in the future, if things come up, it's all very clear to everybody what the expectations are. And so that's what led to the MOU between the city and MnDOT. And just as in business, because I'm asking for something to be clear doesn't necessarily mean I don't trust the other party. But sometimes you can still have problems despite everybody's good intentions. So I think the back and forth between the city and MnDOT was really more about let's get all of this down on paper. Let's make sure our corners are square. because this is a huge undertaking. And as we go down this road, we don't want any misunderstandings. We don't want any unnecessary conflicts. And when you have as many constituents as you do along that corridor, major businesses, they have a voice. So all of that takes a little bit to walk through. I think we did what we needed to do. We got to the other side of it, and we're off and running. And I expect that the city will work well with MnDOT to make this project happen in the shortest amount of time possible, so that everybody on that corridor is impacted the least possible. Now, in my world, as you two know, I voted against this project. This project went 5-2. Now, when that happens and something goes through that maybe I didn't personally vote for, I then have to change my approach once that happens, because it becomes about, let's make this happen in the best way possible. And so that's the hat I've got on right now. We've agreed to do this. Let's go out and do it the best way we know how to do, and let's make it as successful as it can be for Bemidji.
Not gonna lie, watching that meeting, as soon as the fourth yes came, I was a little surprised.
Well, there's good and bad. But
there is no perfect solution.
Right.
That's the thing.
it shows progress in your community. That means you're growing. That's a positive thing. Is you're not growing.
Yeah. And I think it wasn't that anyone didn't want a project. It was different ideas about how it should be done. And that's okay. That's why you have 7 people on the council who have 7 different ideas about how to do things. And you win some, you lose some, even when you're mayor.
Sure.
And I say that tongue in cheek because there are some people who think that, as mayor, I somehow have more, than one vote when it's all said and done. And I don't. I have one vote.
Oh, and I think we all need to remember. I mean, I forget the guy's name from MnDOT, project manager for it. It's like, I've been working on projects like this my entire career. I have never seen one, he said. 100% paid for.
Another good reason to do it.
Right.
Besides, and not to knock anybody that works on that part, but that's not the nicest. It's a road and it serves its purpose, but it's pretty shabby. How about I put it that way?
It needs help. That's why we're having this conversation. That's why this project's being looked at. And you might recall that, this was, in essence, voted down, if you will, in 2018. And that's why they had to go back to formula. So really, these conversations between the community, the city, and MnDOT have been going on all the way back to 2018. And now we're going to see it in 2025. I'd say it's very well vetted.
Sure.
And so at this point, drive it forward, see what we're going to do. And when you really look at what's going on in Bemidji, I was just thinking about this the other day. We've had so many major projects. In the last 4 years, we've done both phases of the water treatment plant at the airport to take care of our PFAS issue. We are in the middle of our clarifier project at the wastewater treatment plant so that we have additional capacity and can keep on growing. We've just greenlit this 197 project we've been talking about. We're on the verge of the YMCA project being voted on. I mean, those are all really major projects, and it's hard to believe all of that has either been started, has been worked on, or has been completed in the last 4 years. That's a lot.
Yeah, and then in 5 years, it won't be like that, and people say, why aren't we getting people to do stuff?
Well, some of these things could be good launching points. I mean, if you get the YMCA project done, what's it going to mean for everything around it? If you have the capacity at your wastewater treatment plant to grow, what kinds of businesses might you attract? So, it's all building on itself. So we'll see. I'm hopeful that 5 years from now, that isn't the conversation that's happening.
Speaking of wastewater, what is your gut telling you on the Northern Township proposal and potentially tying into what the city infrastructure already is?
Well, I don't, at this point, see there being much likelihood that they're going to tie into us from their point of view. Seems like they're moving ahead with their plans for a water treatment facility of their own. They're looking, I think, at becoming their own city. At least that's been the conversation, as I understand it, they've been having. So I think, they've got some additional decisions to make and some things to see through. And I think the other piece of it is going to be, what is the city's position? And we as a council haven't talked about that. So when I say what's the city's position, if they want to become a city, we as a city will be asked, what do you think of that? Will we say we think that's a good idea? Will we say we're opposed to that? Or will we say we don't, it doesn't matter? I don't know what the council's position is going to be, but I suspect in the coming weeks and months we'll be having some of those conversations.
To me, that would be a positive, though. Big picture for the whole area, that your area is growing even outside city limits to a point where the suburbs happen.
Yeah, don't know. It'll be really interesting to see how this shakes out. And like I said, I suspect some council conversations coming up, but it's more about like what will the city's position be on things. We certainly don't have any authority, nor do we necessarily want any to tell Northern what they can or can't do or what they should or shouldn't do. They have a township board. They have their own governance, and they'll have to decide how they want to move forward.
That's another deep discussion later, huh?
It is. When you start talking about annexation and townships and all of those kinds of things, you're right. We could spend a half hour talking about that.
Well, I give you a solid A with today's info.
I appreciate that. And, the thing is, there's always so much work that goes on in the background to get to
Sure.
a conversation like we've had today by so many people. And often, citizens aren't always aware of everything that's going on. And sometimes people will kind of say, well, there's nothing going on.
Right.
And I'm like, there's always a lot going on. And some of it gives birth to things that actually happen. Some things had a dead end and never go anywhere. But that doesn't mean the work wasn't put in.
And I would be concerned if a major projects like we're talking about were figured out in less than a year, because there's a lot to consider. Look how much just on agreeing. I would say that's rare for something to get major projects to not take 5, maybe 7 years sometimes.
Well, think of all the different funding streams. We've got the state giving money. We've got Greater Bemidji buying some of that land to the tune of $500,000. We have utility funds that are going to do some infrastructure. We've got city land proceeds that are going to be brought in here. We've got the Y bringing their money. We've got Sanford Health bringing their money. We've
Right.
got other. Well, that's a lot of revenue to have to raise and coordinate. And every one of these things is a building block.
Sounds like it's been built good.
Yeah, well, it's going to come in February before the council. There'll be a vote, and we'll see what happens.
Well, you and the council keep digging in.
That's the goal.
Thanks for stopping by.
You bet.
Good morning. It is 8:26.
Thank you.